Hello, and I am so excited and privileged on today's video to be joined by best-selling author David Baddiel, whose new book, Taylor Turbochaser, is just about to come out in paperback. It's already out in hardback. It's rather fantastic, and he should be here now. Hello. David. Are you there?
Konnie. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm really good. How are you? How's it all going in this weird scenario?
It's going all right. I'm writing a new children's book at the moment, Future Friends. And it's about a girl from the future coming back to our time. And I started writing this before the pandemic. She accidentally ends up in our time. Basically about a friend from the future appearing in your life now. And yeah, I don't know how much I should include social distancing when she goes to school.
Could you set it a bit in the past? So it's like set in the year 2015 or something.
Lots of people are going to be doing that, aren't they? Lots of people are saying be suddenly shifting their little dramas or their books or whatever back to just before the pandemic because they don't want to have to deal with the fact that everyone's socially distancing and they had a scene at a party or in a classroom or whatever. Anyway, I'm going to not worry about it for this conversation.
Okay. Good. And also, when you're writing your books, you're writing them so that they would work for an adult too, presumably.
What I've always said is that when I started writing comedy for children in children's books, I didn't want to talk down to children. And that's what I think still happens in some children's books. And I think there's an expectation in comedy that you would have to, but you don't have to if it's not for, you know, preschoolers. And even preschoolers, as someone who is married to Mummy Pig, even preschool stuff, even Pepper is really funny and really like sophisticated in loads of ways. So that sort of, as you say, sort of patronizing thing is really annoying.
I should point out that David's wife is the voice of Mummy Pig, a very funny comedian, also Morwenna Banks. So let's rewind to the beginning. What got you into writing children's books in the first place? Is it because you had two of your own?
I only work with the ideas that I have, really. What I sort of do as a storyteller and as a writer and as a comedian is I sort of like scrabble around waiting to have ideas. And then if I think it's a good idea, I will write it. I don't really care what the genre is. So, you know, it didn't worry me when I wrote a film called The Infidel, because I had an idea about a Muslim who was adopted but born Jewish. And as soon as I had that idea, I thought, I'll write it. It doesn't matter that I'm not a screenwriter or whatever, because I'm a storyteller, I can do it, which is perhaps foolhardy, but I believe it quite strongly. So similarly...
And you did it.
I did do it, But similarly, Ezra, when he was 9 or something, 8 or 9, said to me, Dad, why doesn't Harry Potter run away from the Dursleys, the horrible Muggle family that he has to live with when he's not at Hogwarts, and find some better parents? He just asked me that one day in a kind of like general way. And I gave me an idea, which is a world in which children can choose their own parents. And I thought that sounds really, you know, the way that you get an idea and it feels like a tuning fork starts vibrating inside you. Like, that's a great idea for a story. And it felt to me like such a good idea. I thought it must have been done already, but it hadn't. And so I thought, well, I'm not a children's author, am I? But I don't care. I think that's a great idea for a story. I'm going to write it. And so I wrote The Parent Agency, which is about a child, Barry Bennett in that one, who's annoyed, sort of, you know, just in a normal way with his parents. They're too strict, they're tired all the time, they don't buy him what he wants, you know, they won't let him swear, all that kind of stuff. And he wishes for better parents and goes through his bedroom wall into a world run by children where there's a kind of audition process for parents. They have to, you know, make kids convinced that they're the right parents for them, and he gets to try out 5 different parents in this journey. And so I just wrote that because I thought it was a good idea, literally not to have a career as a kids author. But it then did sell. I think it's now sold nearly 1 million copies by itself.
Wow.
And so I thought, I really enjoyed it. And I seem to be being offered, you know, contracts to write some more. And I do think I'm really into story. I love story. It's often, again, a slightly downgraded part of writing. People are more interested in character and mood and blah, blah, blah. But I think plot and story is a brilliant thing. And you can really let that go, I think, in children's literature. You know, people are, you know, you can't write a children's book that's just about mood and texture. It has to have a good story. So I found that part of my brain is really ignited by writing children's books. I've gone on to write another 6, I think it is.
Wow. And the latest one, Taylor Turbochaser. So this is all about a girl who is really into racing, right? Where did that come into your head? Are you into racing? She's in a wheelchair, and then she's got her friend Rahul, and it's a great plot. How did the plots just sort of come to you when, I don't know, Ezra or Dolly sort of say something to you?
I can't rely completely. I should say, by the way, that I bought Ezra an iPod, I remember, as his royalties for that book. But I don't, in general, rely on them to come up with my storylines. With that one, I think all my books have been wish fulfillment stories, which is obviously not that original. Lots of kids' books are wish fulfillment stories, but mine are. I basically sit down and think, what did I want? What would I love to have happened magically when I was a kid? So, like, my second one is called The Person Controller, which is about having a video game controller that allows you to control each other, to give it's twins, and they can give each other the powers they would have if they were in FIFA or Minecraft or whatever. And that comes out of watching my son play video games and think, well, he's loving playing video games, but at some level, what he would love is to be playing for Real Madrid, right? And I don't know, the most obvious one is one I wrote called Birthday Boy, which is about a boy who wishes for his birthday to be every day, and then that happens, right? So when it came to this one, I thought, I remember when I was a kid, I really wanted to drive. My dad was a bit of a petrol head, and he had sort of very clapped out but quite nice sports cars and stuff, and I used to sit in them on my own and sort of play with the steering wheel, right? And so I thought, okay, so I'll write about a kid who somehow magically gets to drive. And then I thought that itself felt a bit not enough. So I don't know, just from that I thought, well, what if it was a girl for a start, just to shake it up a bit? But also, it wasn't really that I wanted to write a story about disability, actually, although it becomes that to some extent. It was more that I thought, a wheelchair, that's sort of like a car already. I mean, it's quite a good thought. It's sort of like a car already. What if that was magically transformed? It's not actually magic. In fact, it's one of my few books that doesn't straightforwardly have magic in it. Rahul, the inventor, upgrades her wheelchair, her new electric wheelchair, into a kind of mad supercar with lots of stuff from his dad's warehouse. And then they end up in a little gang driving it to Scotland. And they're being chased by the police and by their parents and all sorts of things. So it's a big road trip, really. But yeah, it came out of that. It came out of thinking, what's a story about a kid who's got a desire that gets sort of fulfilled in a mad way? But how can I make that not just straightforwardly, a boy likes to drive a car? I just wanted to make it different from that.
All your books are sort of like, either sort of futuristic scenarios or a twist on tech, or things that might happen in a dystopian world. Why did that come about? Is that just what interests you a lot?
Although my books, I try and make them modern, and so they will always have some tech involved, it's more about the high concept thing. So, for example, in Annie Malcolm, which is my third book, is about, it's not that techy, but it's a very high concept. It's about a boy who lives in a house with lots of pets, and everyone loves animals in his house except for him. And he wants tech, he wants computers and stuff, but he keeps on being given animals. And he's annoyed with that. And eventually he ends up being sent to a farm by his parents on a school trip, where a goat puts a magic spell on him, where every time he falls asleep, he wakes up as a different animal, right? And in so doing, it's lots of comedy, but also he sort of learns how to like animals. And that's a really high concept. So I would say an answer to that is, I think it's more about that necessarily than about the tech, but I do always like to put in modern references. There will always be references in my books to social media, to the world we live in now digitally, just because I think I want to reflect the reality of children. I mean, that in a way is the same reason why I put in diversity and I put in disability. It's not because I'm desperately trying to put that stuff in from any kind of earnest or worthy point of view. I just think that is the real world that people experience. It's got people in it who are diverse. It's got people in it who are disabled. So reflect it.
What is brilliant about your books is you do the thing of, so often books are sort of either, I don't know, fantasy fiction or magical or unreal worlds. And then there's another swathe of books that are very much real worlds. And I went to school and I did this and that. And yours very much sort of mixes the two to some extent. Because a lot of books don't put sort of modern day social media and tech and all of that stuff in that you've just mentioned. But it totally is happening. So, they will go on for years to come. So quickly, can you just talk us through the characters of the book then?
That is the Taylor Turbochaser that they're in. So that was originally, at the centre of that will still be an electric wheelchair. But this guy, Rahul, who is Amy's best friend, has built onto it, designed all this stuff. This is a fish tank. This is obviously an umbrella. There's just lots and lots of bits and pieces that he's added to make that. So that's Amy, who is 7-year-old, and she lost the ability to walk in a car crash when she was 7, which is very important because it's all about her working through that particular thing. That's a very, very teenage, very based on what Ezra was like at the time, brother Jack, who basically is very scornful of everything. And this is her strange friend Janet, who's just a bit mad. And that's Raoul. And they all end up in the car.
On the road trip.
Yeah, I mean, you have to read it to know exactly what's happening, but it's to do with her dad. Her dad, who's kind of a distant figure in it, has paid for her original wheelchair, her original electric wheelchair. And when he sees this has happened to it, he's really angry. He lives apart from them in Scotland. And that she decides we're going to drive it to Scotland to show him how great it is. And then he won't demand that they bring it back to the original wheelchair. That's what the start is.
Brilliant. Well, I am now going to read a bit of Taylor Turbochaser. Thank you so much, David. I can't wait to dip in. And happy rest of lockdown. Cheers.
Happy rest of lockdown to you, Connie. It was lovely to talk to you.
Likewise. See you. Bye.
Bye.
Great. Time now to hear a bit of the book then, and we're going to dive straight in at chapter 4 because this really nicely shows off some of David's trademark humour as the gang are venturing through the English countryside and some villagers with very funny names, plus a bit of the tech, and the sat-nav seems to take on a personality of its own. Taylor Turbochaser by David Baddiel, chapter 4, Via Big Fart Moor. They all looked up. They had driven into a village. It was a rather lovely place called, unfortunately, Great Little Pidlington. Ha, said Jack. Great Little Pidlington. Yes, hugely funny, said Amy, but also hugely long traffic jam up ahead. Amy put the brakes on. The Turbochaser stopped. Well, not up ahead anymore. We are in the traffic jam. From his bag of stuff, Rahul got out a pair of binoculars with a telescope stuck to them. What's that? Said Jack. It's called a binoculoscope. When did you make that? I didn't. I bought it off Sam Green. He made it. Rahul put his head through his cat flap and put the binoculoscope to his eyes. Then he came back in again. I think there's some sort of roadworks in the middle of the village. It looks like it goes on forever. Try the sat-nav. Maybe there's a different way. Oh, I could turn my phone back on and look at the map. No, it's okay, Janet, said Amy. She hit the sat-nav screen. You're in a traffic jam. Turn around. Please, save yourself. ETA at your destination is now Monday afternoon. Monday afternoon? Said Jack. That's far too late. Yes, also, what is that voice setting? Said Amy and hit it again. Hi, said the sat-nav smoothly. This voice sounded a bit like a middle-aged DJ on a local radio station. Oh, this is a new one, said Jack. Lovely to be directing you. I see you're in a bit of a pickle. No worries. It's a nice voice. It's making me feel like everything's going to be okay, said Amy. That's great. So what you need to do, okay, is take the next right and continue to Large Bottom. Went all the children in the car. Please don't laugh. I mean, I get it, Large Bottom. Ha ha, funny. But really, it's just the name of the next village. So, from Large Bottom, take a left towards Little Smellhole. Then go straight up Wobbly Nudnuds. It's a series of hills. I mean, really, come on. The children quietened down. Thank you. Yes, good. And then, everyone fine? Okay. Take the A312 all the way up to Stinky Knickers. It continued.
via Big Fartmore, Nappy Town, Thrice Whittle, Lower Whittle, 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 Last Little Whittle and Plopton. Oh, for heaven's sakes, find your own stupid way, said the sat-nav, and turned itself off. Said Amy. I think we might have to find a different method of beating this traffic jam. Have we moved in the last 10 minutes, said Jack. Only with laughter. Oh no, said Amy, who suddenly remembered it was now Saturday and they needed to be there by Sunday. It's getting on for midday. Time is slipping by. We could try this, said Rahul. What? Here. His finger was over a button. I created it as a parking thing. If we needed to narrow the car up a bit to get into a small space. But I guess we could use it here. He turned round to Jack and Janet. It might get a bit cramped back there when I do this. Jack and Janet frowned. Rahul pressed the button. The car made a kind of grinding noise. Then the sashi began to move, expanding forwards and backwards, but getting, as it did so, thinner. Ugh! What's happening? Said Janet. Crushed! Shouted Jack. I'm getting crushed by the inside of this car. I don't want to die. You're not going to die, said Rahul, which was correct. The internal movement of the car stopped, leaving it less like a square and more like a diamond, with Amy at the front and everyone else sitting behind her. The steering wheel had changed too. 2 tubular handles had popped out of the sides of it. The whole thing now looked more like a motorbike. You've made it into a kind of motorbike, said Amy. Rahul looked pleased. He pointed at the button, which had a drawing above it of a car, and then an arrow, and then a motorbike. That's amazing, said Jack. Thank you. By the way, Jack, because you know I'm not very good at spotting it, when you were screaming, I don't want to die, was that you being sarcastic? Oh, yes, Rahul, said Amy, interrupting, and seeing Jack go a bit red. I'm sure it was. Jack gave her a little smile. She smiled back. Chapter 5. I can feel it in my water. Meanwhile, the traffic jam had continued to stand still. Amy looked at the new handles. What do I do? Said Amy. Driving-wise, I mean. Rahul shrugged. It's just changed the shape a bit. So more or less what you've been doing? But more dodgy inny-outy with the cars in front, said Janet. Dodgy inny-outy, said Jack. Is that a thing? Amy revved the throttle, which was now positioned on the right handle. We're about to find out. The Taylor Turbochaser shot forward. Amy swerved it to the right. Cars and trucks were stuck all over the road, so it wasn't easy for her to understand which direction to head for. Not only that, but all the other drivers, in the way that drivers do when they're in traffic jams, were constantly moving their vehicles about, trying to gain little bits of ground. Plus, there were cars coming the other way. So once again, Amy slalomed. Innie, shouted Janet as Amy went inside the lorry in front. Outie, shouted Janet, joined by Rahul, as Amy swerved back across the bus in front of the lorry. Innie, shouted Janet and Rahul, as Amy went left again, and this time Jack, with a face and voice that said, I'm doing this sarcastically, joined in. Dodgy, shouted Janet and Rahul and Jack, as Amy's weaving in and out of the traffic continued. Within a few minutes, Amy was at the front of the traffic queue. She looked round. To her side sat an old man and an old woman in one of those cars that have a normal car front and a wooden back. There were indeed some roadworks that were causing the jam. A not very proper-looking traffic light sat in front of them when nobody was working. Hello, said the old man. He had on a flat cap. You seem a little young to be out driving on this fine day, but perhaps it's just my eyes. They aren't what they were, are they, Mr. Hancock? Said the old woman. Ooh, who said that? Said the old man, looking round. Ha ha, very good, Mr. Hancock. You're as funny as you ever were. Ha ha, many thanks, Mrs. Hancock. Amy smiled at them. What a lovely smile, Mr. Hancock. I agree, Mrs. Hancock. What kind of car is this young lady with the lovely smile? He built it, said Amy, pointing at Rahul, who was blushing, from my wheelchair. Ha ha, we've got another joker here, Mr. Hancock. Young lady says her car is a wheelchair. No, it really is, said Amy. Actually, the wheelchair is still in here, but Rahul added to it. Golly, said Mr. Hancock, what an ingenious fella. I agree, Mr. H. Hey, said Jack, who was looking behind them at the rest of the traffic jam. I hate to break up the loving with the married couple from Up, but... What? Said Raoul. Can I borrow the binoculoscope? Yes, said Raoul, handing it over. Jack put it up to his eyes and looked out of the back of the Turbochaser. Okay, I'm pretty sure that's Mum's van. Where? Said Amy. At the back of the traffic jam. Oh, my days, said Janet. Uh-oh, I think trouble is afoot. Taylor Turbochaser is out in paperback from July. Huge thanks to David Baddiel, but for now it's time to say bye. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please subscribe and spread the word. See you next time.